The first time I used drugs was with my mom when I was 11. She started getting high with me. Next thing you know, I'm stealing cars, robbing houses to supply her drug use. October 8th, 2001, I was in a high-speed chase, and we flipped the car. I was pronounced dead at the scene. I woke up and I was like, man, I was handcuffed to the bed, and I was like, I'm screwed. My dad pretty much disowned me, and he's like, my son wouldn't do something like this. And my mom came in, and my mom found recovery at this point, and she said, Ryan, there's a new way of life. You have to believe that I believe. God can make things happen. Miracles can happen. And man, that's exactly what happened for me, dude. October 9th, 2001 till now, I haven't picked up a substance or any chemicals. I was introduced an opportunity to start a new business. In the last 6 years, we went from a $10 million top line revenue. We're gonna break $100 million this year.
Welcome back to another episode of the Austin Zaback Show. Today we have a very special guest, Ryan Zofay, on the show. And I want to tell you just a little bit about him really quick before we jump into it. So, like I said, Ryan Zofay, a multi-millionaire entrepreneur and founder of We Level Up Treatment Centers, a $175 million addiction recovery network. After overcoming addiction and incarceration, Ryan built an empire in the healthcare, coaching, and real estate, managing over 100,000 square feet of medical facilities. He's also the founder of We Level Up Personal Development, helping individuals break mental barriers and unlock financial freedom with over 10,000 hours of mentorship under guys like Tony Robbins and Dr. Dispenza. Ryan is on a mission to help people transform their lives with purpose. So Ryan, I appreciate you being on the show, man.
Dude, thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Of course. And I know we were able to kind of get it lined up. You're doing a big event tomorrow, actually.
Yeah, Aspire for More at the Phoenix.
Yeah.
In Phoenix here. Yeah.
Which is really cool. And in a little while on the podcast, I want to talk about how you got involved in all that. I know Aspire's a pretty big deal, right? You got David Goggins is going to be out there.
Yeah.
Dean Graziosi, a lot of big names.
Yeah, big names, man. Jamming out.
Yeah.
It's interesting, bro. I think about it, and I went to my first Tony event, August 2018, and I went there because the idea was like, hey, I want to learn how to build and scale my business. Shortly after that, I realized that I was the chokehold and why my business wasn't scaling. I realized it was all of my personal development stuff that I didn't deal with, which was preventing me from scaling. And so in the last 6 years, we went from a $10 million top line revenue. We're going to break $100 million this year in top line.
That's really interesting. I kind of want to talk about that a little bit,
Yeah.
and then we can go back and
Sure.
talk about some of the other stuff in a little while. So why do you say that? Like, what about who you were as a person was preventing the companies from scaling?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, the leader is the chokehold, right? And the way I perceive the people that I'm working with has everything to do with the decisions that they make. And I really didn't think highly of myself. And so that would transfer when I would communicate to the staff that I was supervising. And see, for me, like, leadership is all about getting people to improve the way they make decisions or change the way they perceive life. And the only way that you can teach transformation is you have to actually go through the transformation yourself. And so I realized shortly after that the way I perceive life, the way I was experiencing myself wasn't inspiring people to be better.
Really interesting. Now, walk me through the timeline of the whole thing, right? So obviously, you know, at one point you got into a pretty bad really bad car accident, right? And then so some bad stuff happened there. So where at in the timeline are you talking about right now?
Sure. So this is August 2018.
Okay.
So the car accident was when I was 16.
Okay.
So that was actually like the first major event that took place for me. October 8th, 2001, I was in a high-speed chase. I was running from the law. I just spent 2 years in juvie. I knew at that moment if I were to get arrested again, the judge told me I would be doing 25 to life. I had 21 felonies at the time. And so I was running, trying to get away. And we flipped the car. I was pronounced dead at the scene. And I was trauma-hawked at Dare Medical Center, which is a local hospital where I'm from. And I woke up and I was like, man, I was handcuffed to the bed. And I was like, I'm screwed. The life that I know is over. And my dad pretty much disowned me because he already lost a sister, my sister, his daughter. And he's like, my son wouldn't do something like this. And I remember talking to him in the juvie, and I was just devastated. And my mom came in, and my mom found recovery at this point. She had a year of sobriety, and she said, Ryan, there's a new way of life. And I was like, what? This is crazy. Like, there's no way I'm done. I'm spending the rest of my life in prison. And she said, Ryan, you have to believe that I believe. God can make things happen. Miracles can happen. And man, that's exactly what happened for me, dude.
Wow.
The judge gave me one more chance, and I never looked back.
That's insane.
Yeah, dude.
And so then from 01, right, to 18, What did those years look like?
Yeah, and so my sister, so 2001, I get out of juvie, and I was on fire for recovery. It was all about just making a difference, impacting other people's lives. And from 2000, you said to 2018?
Yeah, because that's when you kind of were talking about a little while ago, right?
Yeah, and so it's interesting. So 2001 to 2005, I was on fire for recovery. I was all about going to meetings, all about giving back, helping people. My mother relapsed. My father was diagnosed with cancer. So all of that childhood trauma was brought back up for me, and I was extremely triggered. And I pretty much made a decision at that point that I was going to have to I was going to have to pursue life by myself. That I was going to be on my own. I had to figure it out on my own because the support systems that I had wasn't there or available for me based on what just happened. And so I started doing commodities. I realized that I wanted to make money. And so my addiction turned into pursuing success, pursuing greed, pursuing money. And so I was doing things that I wasn't really proud of with the commodity business. Aggressive sales practice. I ended up getting sued by the FTC in 2012. So from 2005 to 2012, that was my pursuit to make a ton of money. And I got sued by the FTC, which wasn't fun at all.
No, I can't imagine it was.
No.
And during that time that you stayed off of drugs, alcohol, et cetera, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, so I mean, October 9th, 2001 till now, I haven't picked up a substance or any chemicals, but I definitely moved to other addictions.
Sure.
You know, relationship addiction, anger addictions, love addiction, greed. You know, these are the things that kind of gambling. I shift focus. I mean, what I realize today is like if I don't address the core issue of what's driving me to do the things that I'm doing, I'm just going to address the symptom, and it's only going to be a temporary relief. And so that's what got me into doing the personal development work and realizing that the core of what I went through as a child is what's driving me to make these decisions or to pursue something external to fill this internal void.
Yeah. 2012, is that when you walked away from commodities?
Yeah, so I got sued by the FTC. I go home. My fiance is like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. Pretty much lost everything. She leaves me. The next day, I was on the front page of the Sun Sentinel. Boca firm sued $10 million, whatever. And it was devastating for me, bro. It was absolutely devastating. It brought me to my knees. And it's interesting because I thought about maybe I should get high. Maybe I should drink. And that I knew that wasn't going to solve my problem. And so a good friend of mine, it's funny, I haven't talked to him in a while. He just texted me on the flight here. He said, hey, can we jump on a call? Josh Scott, he introduced me to a place called Onsite. They do inner child, experiential therapy, deep trauma work. They address the core issue of what's going on. And so that was like my introduction to personal development. And it was life-changing for me because I really got to take a look at what was going on and why I was making the decisions that I was making at that time in my life.
Wow. I just got back from the Hoffman process about a year ago. Have you heard of it? Okay, it's all deep work, trauma, childhood. It's all childhood trauma.
Wow.
Yeah, based. You go there for 8 days. You have to give your cell phone up the day you walk in.
Yeah.
You sleep there. No television. You can't leave. And you're basically in a classroom for 18 hours a day doing experiential work. And it's pretty crazy.
So you did this?
I did it. Yeah.
What was
I've
the
done quite a bit.
takeaway?
I've done Joe Dispenza. I did the advanced retreat.
Okay.
At Joe Dispenza. I've been to Tony Robbins. I'm
well versed.
Right. Well, it's funny, right? Because I asked, I told that's actually my wife too that you met, my creative director. I told her, I said, this will be a good podcast. I feel like I have a lot in common with you. I have a very addictive personality, and I've already learned in my life I have to be very careful of where I, use that addiction.
Yeah.
Right. So this will be really good. So let's get back to you though. So here you are now. At what point do you go and you start? Because you said a little while ago in that 2018 timeframe is when you realized that you didn't think highly enough of yourself, and therefore your companies were stagnant, right? So what companies were those, and when did you start those? Yeah,
so I started the drug and alcohol rehab business in late 2013. I went away. I did like a year of just like personal growth, recovery, really licked my wounds after being sued by the FTC. And then my father gave me some seed capital to buy into a company that wasn't doing well. So marketing and sales was my background. I did sales with the commodities. So it was very familiar to me. So it made sense. And so I jumped into that business. Shortly after, realized that he was the chokehold, the guy that I partnered with. And I was like, look, man, like I can't keep doing this. Either I buy you out or we move on. And so he let me buy him out. And that was really when I started to scale the business. And I was stagnant. I was stuck. I didn't really understand business. I don't have a business background. I don't know how to run business. And my approach to people was very like rough around the edges. You know, like my dad was very hard. My dad grew up, my father's father was a staff sergeant in the Army. So his approach with my reprimanding was very hard and aggressive. And that's how I would treat people. And I would blow up a lot of relationships relatively quick because I would set the standard so high. And when they wouldn't meet that standard, I didn't know how to communicate it in a loving, inspiring way. So people would be like, what the hell is wrong with this guy? And so, but a lot of that had to do with my own reflection of myself, how I felt about myself. And you know, we all are mirrors of each other. So if I'm projecting what I think you need to do, it's typically a projection of myself. And so that was the stuff that I realized going down and doing this work.
What work did you do specifically, do you think, that got you to a point where you maybe now look back and you no longer struggle as much maybe as you did back then with that? Like when was that pivotal moment where you maybe started to love yourself a little bit more, think more highly of yourself? Yeah,
you know, it's been a journey, man. I'm over 10,000 hours at this point of actual course room work, whether it's facilitating or being a participant in the course room. So my first exposure to personal development work was actually right before I got sued. I went to this place called TLC in Fort Lauderdale called the Living Course, and I was at a turning point. I was introduced an opportunity to start a new business or continue doing commodities. And the greed and the ego wouldn't allow me to get away from the commodities. 6 months later, I got sued by the FTC. Then I went to Onsite, which was in Tennessee. And I realized that I needed to do more work. So after Onsite, I started diving into TLC and really getting involved with that community. So from 2012 to 2016, I did like 30 events over that time frame. Still struggling with relationships, still struggling with my interaction with my mom and my dad, just a lot of revenge and resentments and just holding on to all these traumatic experiences. I was still having a hard time taking responsibility for my life. I wanted to blame them for why I was where I was at.
Yeah. It's fascinating, right? Because, you know, there's so many people that watch podcasts like these that struggle with all the things that, you know, we're talking about that they don't even know where to begin, right? They're like, you know, and hopefully they can take something from what it is that we're talking about, you know. What was like do you remember a particular seminar or event that you went to that was really eye-opening, like a Tony Robbins or like was there one in particular that you can recall where you sat there and you're like, dang?
Sure. So a big turning point for me was right around 2016. I was at an event and it was Sunday night, and the lady that was facilitating, her name was Rita Holmridge, and there was a young lady that was there that was 32. Her father came because they were having a very challenging relationship, and she was crying and she was angry and she was upset. And it was interesting because it was specifically to the same timeline that I had, and I was 32 at that time. So she says, okay, so for the first 16 years, your father drank and he didn't raise you the way that you thought you should have been raised. And the young lady was like, yeah. And she's like, okay, it sounds like for the last 16 years, you've gotten back at him and you've been in revenge with him. And I was like, holy shit, that's me. You know, that was a turning point for me, that I realized that I was holding on to this resentments and this bitterness. And I went to the hospital that night and forgave my mom, asked my mom for forgiveness for how I was treating her, blaming her for why my life was the way it was. And so that was like a huge turning point for me.
What do you think, and I'm bouncing around a little bit here, so okay. I apologize, but what do you think caused before the car accident, like was that initial version of you that was, drugs, alcohol, whatever it might have been, did that stem, now looking back on that, right, hindsight's 2020.
Sure.
Did that stem from most of that childhood trauma and a lot of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's interesting, man. When my sister passed away when I was 5, it just destroyed my family. Both parents just kind of spiraled out. My mom turned to drugs. My father turned to alcohol. So they were just very abusive and just, they weren't there, very, very absent. So I was left to my own devices. And so I feel like we're a product of our environment, right? And a lot of this stuff that I did was introduced by my mom and my dad, the abuse. And my mom, the first time I used was with my mom when I was 11. So she started getting high with me. Next thing you know, I'm stealing cars, robbing houses to supply her drug use. And so
Wow.
that's really what taught me how to become like a criminal and a street guy. And so I held on to those resentments for so long because I went to jail. I pretty much almost lost my life. I was angry. Like all these things were happening, and all I could do is think about, this is your fault. I blame you for this. And yeah, maybe she exposed me to it, but once I became an adult, there's no more excuses.
Right.
So like if you're listening to the podcast and you're looking back at your life and you're saying, hey, my life, I got dealt a shitty hand. Okay, great. But you can change how you play that hand whenever you want. And that was a huge turning point for me.
The car accident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
And do you think, had that car accident not happened, I mean, what do you think life would have looked like? Have you ever thought about that?
No, I mean, I feel like it was necessary for me. I have a belief that everything happens for us,
Sure.
right? Thank
Yeah.
God for that. And so that was a pin in time for me to just kind of stop. I needed to stop. I needed to have a self-reflection. I spent 9 months in jail during that time.
Yeah.
And so it was really an opportunity for me to like get my grip on what I wanted to do and what I wanted to be in life. And that was really the most humbling experience I had, because my life was out of my control at that point. And that was when I really surrendered and understood what it meant to like believe in God and have a relationship with God, because I had no other choice at that point. I'm literally behind bars. The judge is going to determine what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. So I literally only could do is surrender, and just kept asking God for guidance and support and strength. But I feel like that was such a pivotal point, because I got to build an unshakable relationship with God, because God says, okay, while I'm sitting in there, he says, okay, I'll give you one more chance, but what are you going to do with it this time? And I just remembered having those like self-reflecting moments and those conversations, and it was the leverage that I needed to get out and stay sober.
And how do you know in that moment that that was God talking? You know, some people might be watching, they're like, I think I've had, you know, God's told me to do different things, but is it really him? How do I know it's him? Like, how did you know in that moment? I'm having a conversation here,
Sure.
and I know what direction I need to go.
Yeah, I feel like God's present everywhere all the time in everybody. It's up to us to find the message. It's up to us to see the silver lining. And so when I'm sitting in juvie, there's guys that are in the same dorm that I'm in getting much more severity of time with a lot less charges. I already did 2 years. I have 21 felonies. I have a second-degree felony. I robbed a store with a handgun. So the fact that the likelihood that I'm going to go away for 25 to 50 years is very high. That didn't happen.
Yeah.
So it's like
Who
what
else can it be?
Right. So that was, I mean, thank God it was like a burning bush experience, because outside of that, I would, you know, who knows what I would have done.
Yeah, really, really incredible. I'm Christian myself, and so I love hearing stories like that and seeing miracles play out in real life, right? And how everything happens, you know, ultimately for a reason. We'll kind of go maybe back to, you know, when now you're running your companies, you're working on yourself again. You know, what was it specifically that you did to start? You said, you know, and maybe we've already kind of talked about it, but you said that, you know, you didn't quite believe in yourself or maybe think highly of yourself, and therefore you showed up in the world with your team, the people you were trying to lead, things of that nature in that company at that time, maybe in not the best way, right? Because, you know, it didn't inspire, like you said, right?
Sure.
What were you doing then in that season? Because at this point, you've done a decade and a half of personal development. Correct me if I'm wrong.
For sure.
So then, like, what was that missing piece of personal development that maybe you hadn't done or you overlooked that was still causing these problems in leadership and stuff so many years later?
Yeah, I think for me, it was just the relentless pursuit to discover more about myself and like really commit to joining a community of like-minded people to support me and to guide me. And I feel like that's what Tony really brought to the table for me. I think I did like 30-something events over the 6-year timeline I've been with him. So I was just relentless with going like every month. And so that was a huge piece for me. People ask me like, what was the biggest thing that you learned from Tony? And it kind of all points back to just believing in myself and just believing that I'm capable, believing that I can lead and guide and be the guy standing out in the front, you know, taking the arrows, because that's what leadership is all about. Is leading by example. It's interesting when I talk on stage. Sometimes I ask people. I said, you know, who in here would like to have blessings in their life? And everybody obviously raised their hand and said yes. I said, okay, Well, I've learned if you want blessings in your life, you have to be a blessing. And if you want more love in your life, you have to be more loving. If you want to make more money, you have to become more valuable. And so understanding that I have to be the demonstration or the representation of what people need to see, be the example. And so that was the missing piece. I was always waiting for it to appear. I was always waiting for somebody to give me permission or to validate me or to say that I was good enough. And then I got to the place where I was like, screw that. Like, I'm done like waiting. I'm done sitting on the sidelines. I'm done playing scared. Like, what else do I have to lose?
Yeah.
You know, so that was just a huge piece for me.
What were some like practical steps that maybe people could do? Because a lot of it boils down to confidence, correct me if I'm wrong, right? Like being confident in yourself, being confident in who you are and what value you bring, and being, you know, willing to get uncomfortable and get out there and just do it confidently, right? Yes. What can people do that?
Yeah, so you know, your past perceived voids will create your future perceived values. So the voids that your past perceived voids will create your future perceived values.
Got it.
Everybody has voids. Everybody's walking around with voids, and those voids are what's preventing you from making that next decision or making that choice that you want to make because of some insecurity or some limitation or something that was taught to you as a child growing up or whatever, or somebody that exposed something to you. If you grew up poor, you're not going to understand the concept of investing in yourself.
Right.
And so that was a breakthrough that I had to go through. I had to realize that the first thing is everybody has this like cognitive idea of what they need to do, right? Like, oh, I know I need to get a coach. Oh, I need to do more seminars. Oh, I need to start my business. But then it dies there. People usually die on the mountain there. They don't take that next step, which is the emotional mastery. We all have these emotional thresholds that prevent us from breaking through those voids. People only do what they feel like doing. If you don't feel like getting out of bed and pursuing success, you're not going to do that. And so there has to be a level of consistency and persistence and perseverance to push through those emotional blocks and literally have those breakdowns. Because at the end of the day, your nervous system is designed to keep you safe. Your nervous system is going to put you in a protective place because that's what it's designed to do. So once you understand this, the human condition that everybody has is there's this emotional regulation that's going on underneath your awareness, beneath the what the eyes can see, which is the emotional mastery. And so you have to push up against that every single day of your life. That means breakdown and crying. Dude, I started doing personal development in January, teaching it, facilitating it myself. January 2021 was when I did my first in-person personal development event. The first 25 events, bro, every single morning before the event, I would literally be on my shower floor crying hysterically, scared to death that I was going to be a fool, that people were going to make fun of me. People were making fun of me. I was going to go in there. I was going to make a fool out of myself. I wasn't going to be able to lead. I wasn't going to be able to inspire. And I just dragged myself off the floor and got in there. And then all of a sudden, I just stumbled my way through. And then eventually, now I'm speaking on some of the biggest stages in the world.
It's a crazy story.
Yeah, bro.
And I can relate actually big time. You know, people have looked at me a lot over the years and said, Austin, you're so good at speaking and being on camera and this and that. And it's like, dude, at one point I was terrified. You know, still am. There's still a piece of that actually that hasn't gone away, to be completely honest. Not on camera. Cameras don't bother me anymore at all, but on stages in particular.
Stages, I'm lights out. Camera, I'm not as comfortable.
Yeah, really? It's the opposite.
Yeah.
Wow, okay, yeah. See, cameras, you could tell me there's like a billion people watching that. I can't see them, so I don't, it just doesn't, like I've kind of tuned it out, you know?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll just do me. It's just you and me here, you know?
Right.
But it's interesting. So because I have to ask, you know, when you're laying on that bathroom floor the morning of, I mean, how do you get up and get in your car and put on your suit or whatever it is that you're going to wear and drive and go backstage and get mic'd up? And like, what's going through your mind? What are you doing? You know, how do you pull that off?
Yeah. I mean, so after about 30 minutes of crying hysterically, there's a moment of relief. There's a moment of like, all right, like I'm here now. Like, what else is there? What else am I going to do? And so I'm an advocate of, and a lot of people are going to say this is crazy, but you know, the concept of like jump out of a plane and then figure out how to, you know, find the parachute later or jump out, you know, open the parachute later, whatever that saying is. They
like
say.
Fire, ready, aim.
Yeah, right. So for me, it's like once you put yourself in a position where you can't back out, you have no other choice. And so they were there. The people were there. There's 50, 60 people showing up. I had to be there. There was no one else that was going to do it. And so I just kept replicating that model. I kept making a decision, committing to something, and then showing up. Like today, bro, like I literally woke up this morning, flew over here. I'm not feeling so great. I got to jump. I got to wake up tomorrow, do the Aspire for Phoenix. I have no choice. Like I have to commit. I have to show up. Like it isn't about me no more. It's about you. It's about the community. It's about the people that I'm serving. And so what I have found is putting yourself in a position where it's less about you and more about the people you're serving. And once you can put yourself in that mindset, all the fear and all the stuff disappears, but it takes time. But that's what I'm saying, the emotional mastery. So going back to cognitive, now emotional, you have to just get those reps in. You just have to do them over and over and over and over again. And so many people don't do that, and then they sit on the sidelines and they bitch and they complain they're not where they want to be. Well, you didn't practice hard enough.
Right.
You didn't try hard enough. You got to keep going. And then after the 50th time, if you're still not there, maybe you got to do 50 more.
Yeah.
So many people lose sight of that. I'm not good because I was born talented. I had to put the work in.
Yeah.
I've had to grind. I said I'm over 10,000 hours of teaching personal development. Bro, and some days I literally fumble. Some days you think it's my first day. You're like, what? And then some days I crush it, you know, and it's you just have to keep going.
Yeah.
You can't stop.
There's that saying I really like that is God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called.
So true.
You know, and it's the truth, right?
So true.
Like you look at all throughout the Bible, you know what I mean? There were people that were more qualified that didn't get the thing, and the less qualified murderer and the guy that it was a really bad person is the one that God wanted to use.
Sure.
You know, and you see that all over, right? We see it in the world we live in today. You know, the guys like you know, like me, that shouldn't be where we're at, but we are because God said, "Hey, no, you're going to go do this."
Right.
You know,
100%. God gives us what we're worthy of receiving, but it's up to us to be the one worthy enough to receive, and that means be the example. And so, having gone through being sued by the FTC, looking at 25 to life, having 21 felonies, being unfaithful in most of my relationships, being an absolute monster, treating my family like absolute shit. Dude, that's a lot of guilt and shame to carry. And so the only thing I can do is find it in my heart and ask God for forgiveness to be able to serve at the highest level. And as soon as I started to shift my perspective and realize that this isn't about me anymore, it's about the people that I can serve, which is why I flew on a plane not feeling good, took medicine this morning, I'm sitting here with you, going to do the Aspire tomorrow. It's not about me.
Right.
There may be one thing that I can say that can literally change somebody's life, and how I wouldn't be worthy of receiving the life that I have if I didn't do that, if I didn't step up and be that guy.
Wow. That's powerful, man.
Yeah.
You know, really powerful. So let's talk about the treatment centers a little bit. You know, obviously you're passionate about that. You had a problem. You overcame that problem. Now you get to help people with that, right? How has that evolved over time, you know, and what does that look like today?
Sure. I mean, we have an incredible company, dude. I am so blessed. I have so many rock stars that are around me that really run the business. I don't run the business day to day. I haven't ran the business in like 3 years. But a lot of that had to do with me going to Tony and understanding the transition from a business operator to a business owner. And I realized that as a leader, it's my job to inspire people to become better. So you want to improve, you want to make your company more valuable, make the people in it more valuable. And so I just started pouring into my people. I started putting people in position that had certain characteristics, and I just poured into them and inspired them and believed in them like Tony believed in me, like my mentors believed in me. And then all of a sudden they started to achieve success, and the more success they achieved, the more inspired they were to want to grow the business. And so I would say probably 60% of the growth that we've gone through in the last 12, 13 years has everything to do with the people that are currently in place, because they're now hungry, they're motivated, they're seeing this success, they're understanding what servant leadership is all about. They're starting to make more money. They're impacting thousands of lives. So they're just on fire, you know, and it was really just creating an environment where they could fail forward and love them when they fall down. Because at the end of the day, if I go down the path of experience and I don't let you go down the path of experience, then I'm going to be the only one that learns.
Right.
So if I let you go down that path and support you and guide you and hold your hand during it, you're going to get better. You're going to feel more inspired. You're going to build that confidence. And so that has actually been at the forefront of how we've been able to grow and scale. So now we have 600 employees. We have over 8 programs. We do incredible work, dude. It's
how many
so
locations?
So we have 6 locations now. We're adding a 7th in Texas, and then we're expanding on a couple sites. So I think in total we'll have 10 by the end of next year.
Okay.
I think we'll have close to like 1,100, 1,200 employees, impacting close to like 15,000 people a year.
Wow. So how many, what is that, like a 1,200 people per facility per year on average, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so right now we're 350 actual clients in beds,
Okay.
but then we also treat the family and the siblings. So we typically add 2 per. So you figure 350 times 12 is 3,600 times 2 or times 3, it puts us at about 10,000. But we're going to be adding another 170 beds. So you figure double that. So we'll be at 20,000 families, patients, clients by the end of next year.
Talk to me about that model. I don't understand the model very well, so maybe it'll be valuable for people watching. But you say the families and the siblings. What do you mean by that?
Sure. So typically it's a family disease, right? So, like what we grew up in, we're exposed to whatever we're exposed to. So the family gets the drug addict or the alcoholic or the person with the illness to our program. And then we realized very shortly after that most of the problems was the enabling family.
Right.
And so what we found early on in my career, we would fix and solve the patient's problem, and then we would send them back into the same environment. And then shortly after, they would fall short. And so once we remove, quote unquote, the problem, as the family would think, we then show them, we put the mirror and say, hey, take a look what enabling looks like, what codependency looks like. And now they're like, holy crap, they identify that they've been a contributing factor to this patient's problem and the disease. And so we create support groups and we give them information, and we actually give them therapeutic outlets to coach them, sponsor them, treat them as well. And we give them the opportunity to also to do some work as well.
Can you give me just like a metaphorical example of what that could look like and play out in the real world? Like, meaning, let's say somebody had like an alcohol problem or whatever, like what is enabling, what could a family be doing that they don't even maybe realize that they're doing that is causing a big problem?
Yeah, and so let's say, Jim is the breadwinner of the family, and he's an alcoholic, and the mom and the daughter don't work, so they just allow Jim to keep drinking, because if Jim stops bringing money in, how are they going to survive? So they just keep it going. They just keep the sickness going. And so when we convince Jim to come to our program, and he has FMLA, and he's allowed to go away for 60 days or whatnot. Then we spend a lot of time working with the family, showing them how they've been codependent, and showing the wife, hey, you're choosing not to work, and you're choosing not to be a supporting cast in this dynamic. And it's easy for her to say, oh crap, now that Jim's no longer in the picture, it's so much easier when there's a dysfunction, it's so much easier to point the finger at you.
Right.
But if you're no longer there, now who do I have the finger to point?
Right.
So it's very easy to say, hey, look, take a look at what's going on here. Look at how you're enabling Jim by not letting Jim go to treatment. And so, for example, like this, so we've seen situations, and Jim's just a made-up name.
Yep.
2 weeks into Jim being with us, the wife's trying to get Jim to come home early. Calling, creating problems. Right. Oh, so-and-so's doing this. You need to get back here. I can't believe you left the family. How dare you? Just really causing conflict. And there's been times when Jim would leave early or elope. And so that would be like a codependent type scenario.
Makes sense. Yeah. What would you say on this subject? You hear all the time, right? Like people who have an addiction or have maybe an addictive personality, but let's say a particular addiction where they want to quit, right? Would you agree that every addict ultimately wants to quit, or would you not agree with that?
Yeah, at a certain time through their process, there's definitely a moment of clarity where like, holy shit, this is really bad. I need to stop.
But they don't know how a lot of times.
Yeah.
Right? And then the outside world, people who don't have addictions or don't have that type of personality or that type of maybe trauma, they tend to say things like, well, then just quit.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And so like, what do you have to say to people like that maybe don't even understand? Maybe, somebody might be watching and like they know somebody who's close to them and they've been the one saying that to that person, like, hey, just quit. It's
interesting, doing all this work in personal development and being around Dr. Joe and David Traub and, Atlarian psychology and Tony Robbins, all these people, everybody is addicted to their life. You have your life. You do your thing every single day. It's an automatic response to your program. That's an addiction. Some addictions cause a lot more consequences, which are what people tend to point out. But anybody that's listening right now, they're going to see that 95% of what they do is an addictive, unconscious program
Sure.
the same thing that they did the day before, the same thing they did before, the same friends that they've been talking to, saying the same things. When things don't go the way that they want them to, picking up the phone and talking about the same thing over and over again, how things didn't go the way that they thought they should, or why they're not where they want to be. That's all addiction. They're addicted to that response. And so once you start to understand that you can create whatever life that you want every single day of your life, you're no longer living in the addictive response. And so when I break out of my comfort zone, like getting on podcasts and traveling and speaking on stages, my nervous system freaks out.
Yeah.
I start to break down, shut down. I start to get crazy because I'm not familiar to this environment. And so it's the same thing with alcoholism. People drink every single day because it comforts them. They're safe. They're comfortable. They know the poison. People are addicted to the poison they do know and not the poison they don't know. And so it's easy for me to drink every day because it's what I know. If I smoke weed every day, it's what I know. Well, remove that, it's a whole new experience, and your body doesn't want that. There's no difference in working. Think about how many people walk around today working a job, a 9 to 5, but they won't do anything different. They see this life, they see this new potential, but they're like, that's not for me. They just tell themselves this story to keep them stuck, to keep them safe. That's an addiction.
Sure.
You're addicted to living a normal life, so to speak. And I don't want to say a normal life is a bad thing, but so there's this new thing that I've really started diving into is access. What does access really mean? Like to have more, to be more, to experience more. Most people don't even know that's available to them. They think that they're stuck with what they have. The cards that they were dealt was their cards, and this is it. I just have to stay in my life. And then they start to tell new stories about this, like, I just got to be grateful for what I have. They start to tell themselves these new stories just to keep them where they are. But if you gave somebody a magic wand and said, hey, you can have any life that you want. You just have to shake this wand and it's yours. I guarantee you most people would not keep the life that they have.
Yeah.
They'd be like, I wish I had a little bit more money, or I wish I could do this, or I wish I could do that, or I wish I could have that conversation I didn't have, whatever it was. And so people are so stuck. Well, that's an addiction.
So the access thing though, right? Like elaborate on that a little bit.
Sure. So here we are in life, perceiving life through our level of consciousness. And underneath that consciousness is our belief systems. And those belief systems trigger our nervous system to feel a certain way. People do the things that they feel like doing. And so once you can experience your future self now, before the event happens, that's when the event will happen. And so if you be the example of the life that you want, that means you already have that life, because you're being the guy that has that future life now. And so many people don't understand this. And so when you think of access, it's like, what's stopping you from getting or having the life that you want? What's stopping you from feeling the way that you want to feel about the life that you have? Your own self.
Right.
The way you experience life through your unconscious lens. You will never be consistent with anything that is inconsistent with your unconscious programming. So if your unconscious program doesn't feel safe or gives you the level of access to step on a stage, to start a business, to invest in that money, it's not going to make sense to you, and you're not going to do it. And you're going to tell yourself a story on why you're not going to do it. Either you're going to sell yourself the lie on why you're not going to do it, or you're going to sell yourself the lie on why you're going to do it.
Right.
The difference between a believer and a non-believer is somebody who takes action.
Right. Yeah, it's so true. I mean, it really is crazy when you get into the personal development side of the podcast. I haven't had anybody on in a while because I kind of similar to you, I grew up, sitting backstage with Bob Proctor, Les Brown, Eric Thomas. I've been to Tony Robbins, Date with Destiny. I did the Joe Dispenza, the Hoffman. You got to check out the Hoffman.
Yeah,
it's pretty
sounds
cool.
Interesting.
And I love having these types of conversations because, it just brings back all the memories and stuff. Right. So, I want to talk a little bit about Aspire, though, and your involvement with that. Obviously, there's some really cool things that you guys are doing from what I can tell.
Yeah, for sure.
I told you before the pod, I know Andrew Cordial. I'm not sure exactly what his involvement is anymore, but tell me, how did that come to be? Was it, because you said in 21 was the first ever, motivational, talk that you did, a little mastermind, right?
Yeah.
And then you did 25 to follow. Was that Aspire, or did that turn into Aspire? What's the difference?
Yeah, so it turned into Aspire. My first Aspire for More tour was December 2023. Yeah, was it 23? Okay, yeah. December 2023 was my first I was invited to do a panel. I did a panel and I did really well, and they invited me back. And then yeah, I got a main keynote, which was like a real big deal for me. My first big stage was Chicago. I think there was like 4,500 people there.
Wow.
It was pretty awesome. Yeah.
And were you terrified at that point?
Yeah, bro. It was my first like big keynote moment like that. Like I've spoken in front of Tony's stage in front of 10,000 people, but I didn't have like a 45-minute segment.
Right.
So like this was like my first real like main keynote, main stage, prime time. And so, yeah, I was nervous, dude. And it was just lights out, though, dude. I crushed it, man.
Yeah.
I really stepped into that future self now, right? Like, what would that guy do if he already had done this 1,000 times, right? Like, you can generate those emotions and those feelings. And so, yeah, what Andrew and Eddie and these guys are doing is pretty awesome, man. They're really bringing an incredible culture together to teach people and understand money, right? It's like so many people have these beliefs in this money blueprint of what they think money should be or what they should do with their money or how they should spend money, and they don't understand the value of money or even the relationship with money. And so that's a lot of what Andrew and Eddie are teaching people is, bringing high level people into a stadium, and there's a lot of networking and a lot of cool things happening. And then they introduce and teach people the value of money and how to save money and tax shelters and benefits with what they should do. Like what we were talking about earlier, I think they even have like a real estate vertical too, where teaching people how to depreciate their real estate.
Yeah.
So if I make $10 million and if the percentage of depreciation was 100%,
right,
I could buy, whatever I would need to buy, $40 million worth of real estate to essentially write off my entire tax
wipe
bill.
it all out.
Right. And so you're making 10 million and you just keep rolling it forward.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, you're not paying any taxes. I mean, people get upset at Trump. That's what Trump did. I mean,
well, he's just a business guy.
Yeah.
I mean, without getting too political about it, at the end of the day, I mean, he's just taking advantage of the same tax code that anybody can take advantage of.
Right.
It's not like he has some special little formula in there.
Right.
It's like, here's the tax code. We can all take advantage of it. Right. So it's really cool to see that. And so are you a part, do they just bring you in as a speaker? How does that look and feel on the back end?
Yeah. So I've done, I think like 6 events at this point. So this time I'm not going to be a main keynote. I'm going to be working the VIP, and I'm going to be doing a lot of interviews and talking about their experience, kind of what they were doing prior to getting to the Aspire. What are some insights and perspectives that they have now with this new information. And so Alex Smith which is VP of Talent, who I built a good relationship with. So her and I have been kind of working behind the scenes on how I can be more supportive for that community, being the example, showing people the rags to riches story, showing people what it looks like to invest in themselves, show up, be consistent with showing up. Because if you're a product of your environment, and you grew up in the formative years of your life between the ages of 1 and 8, this is the model of your world. Well, why wouldn't you recreate that and show up to a seminar and be a part of a community to recreate the model of your world? That's exactly what I did with Tony. I showed up, I did 30 events. Well, after the 10th event, I have a completely different perspective on life. After the 15th event, I'm like, holy shit, life is so different. After the 30th event, I'm like, I got to go out there and lead now. You know, so like if you're thinking about joining a community, that's the best thing you can do.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be exposed to high level people that are going to give you new habits and ideas and insights and perspectives. And you're going to be able to make different decisions in your life, which is more access.
Right. Was there a particular program that allowed you to go to 30 events, or did you just literally hire Tony? Like, how did that?
Yeah. So my first event, I just went, it's so funny how it goes. My fiance at that time, she's like, you need to do something. Like, you're a mess. She buys me a ticket.
It's like Date with Destiny or something?
No, it was actually Business Mastery.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so it was actually January 2018 I was supposed to go. I didn't go because it wasn't my idea. I was pissed to her. I was fighting with her about it. So finally the guy at Tony calls me. He's like, dude, like, what's up? Why aren't you coming? And I'm like, just bitching and complaining. And he's like, look, bro, he's like, come to the event. He's like, if you don't like it after day 1, I promise I'll give your money back. I was like, send me that in an email and I'll do it. So he sent me an email, guarantee money back at the end of day 1. If you don't like the event, we'll give you your money back. Dude, at the end of day 1, I signed up for Platinum Partnership. Made an $85,000 investment, and I became a Platinum Partner, which that meant you can go to every event for that year as many times as you want when they had an event. And so that's what I did, dude. I literally every month I was just going to events.
No way.
And then after about 6 months, I became, really integrated in the community, and people really started to fall in love with me. And what I found, which was so interesting, because I always thought I needed to be who you wanted me to be.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of what that community did for me was like, dude, do less of that and be more of you. Because I didn't think that I belonged. I didn't think that like my kind belonged there. Drug addict, criminal, like liar, fighter, all these things. And the more I let them see that part of me, the more they embraced me and the more they liked me and the more they loved me. And I was like, holy shit. So then after 6 months of being there, they're like, dude, why don't you join Tony's inner circle? And I was like, what? I was like, I can't do that. I'm not like you guys. My business isn't doing that good. And then I just made the decision, dude. And I went to Tony's house. June 2020 was my first time being in proximity with him. And I actually saw him apply everything that he's been teaching me in his own life, because he is in seminar business.
Yeah.
The pandemic happened. He lost everything overnight, bro. Literally, he lost hundreds of millions of dollars overnight. And I watched him apply everything that he was teaching me. So it was like such an incredible experience for me. And that was actually when I made the decision to now start leading and teaching other people and doing the seminars and speaking on stages, building brand. And dude, from that point till now, bro, I've 10x my life.
Yeah. It's crazy. That thing you were describing a minute ago, would another name for that maybe be imposter syndrome?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What advice would you give to somebody who's struggling with imposter syndrome?
So simple as this, right? Like, let's say you don't know how to swim. Well, you're never going to know how to swim unless you get in the pool and swim. And so clearly you have imposter syndrome because you're not putting enough effort to become your future self. It's just getting reps in. It's just a practice that you haven't applied. So if you're wanting to fit in, but you're not doing the work that the person that would be doing that's in, then clearly you're imposter syndrome. If you're a speaker, well, get on the stage and start speaking.
Right.
Even if you suck, who cares? You're doing it. If you say you're a speaker, but you speak once every 6 months, well, clearly you're going to have imposter syndrome because you're not speaking enough. You're not doing the thing enough. That's simple. Just get in there, get your reps in there, fail forward, make mistakes, fumble, screw up as many times as you possibly can. And then all of a sudden you're going to look back and be like, well, I'm not an imposter anymore because I do more work than most people.
Right.
Right. And that's where people just, so many people want the success and think that they don't have to do the work to get there. That is not the case.
Yeah.
I have put in so much work. I have been on my knees crying hysterically so many times thinking I was not going to make it. How am I going to cover payroll? How am I going to figure out this marketing strategy? Google just changed their algorithm. What the hell am I going to do now? They just changed legit scripts. Now we're being super compliant in the healthcare space. Like, there's so many points of adversity that have been thrown my way. I could have quit a million times, but I didn't. I keep going. You keep finding ways. And it's just changing your belief system. If you tell yourself that there's a way, it can be done, and you do whatever you possibly can to find it, eventually you'll find it. If you quit looking, you're not going to find it. And that's the biggest lesson that I can give to anybody in life. I'm not a master. I created this guy. Like, this guy that's sitting on this couch, I created thousands of hours of work, thousands of conversations like this, exposing myself, being vulnerable, being authentic, saying like, hey, I don't know the answer. Can you help me? Like, so many people are scared to just do that. Like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing right now. Can you please help me? Dude, there's so many people that would love to offer help. But if you're not asking for it, then how are you going to figure it out?
So valuable. All right, a couple more questions for you. What is your daily, what's an aspect of your daily routine now that keeps you on your A game? You know, that you've learned that it's like you have to do this in order to function at a high level and not even deviate back to maybe who you used to be.
So I think mastery in life is becoming super conscious about your unconscious program. What's going on underneath? What's going on under the hood? What's going on if you slow down long enough to see what's really happening? And so you went away for a week. Think about how hard that was not to be connected to your phone, not to have the TV, not to have the internet. Your body goes through a detox. So for me, the most important thing that I've adopted today is meditation. I do an hour a day no matter what.
No matter what.
As soon as I wake up, I plug in my ear pods, I meditate. And I just get super, super conscious and still. And I start to look at what's going on. Where am I feeling my nerves? Where am I feeling voids? What's going on? I think that's number one. And number two is having somebody that tells you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. So I have people around me that call me on my shit. Hey, dude, you're doing that thing again. Hey, that old pattern's popping up. Hey, you're not taking responsibility. Hey, you're blaming right now. Hey, you're being a victim right now. I need that, dude, because we all have blind spots. And if you don't have somebody that's pointing out these blind spots, they're going to stay blind spots. And so that is where I say becoming super conscious about your unconscious. Create a practice where you're obsessing about finding out what is in your blind spots, what's going on under the hood, because you will always discover something. There's always something there.
Yeah. I love that. No, I mean, the blind spot thing is incredible. What would you say to people like who should they be picking for a role like that in their life? Like, what are they looking for in that type of person? Like, is it somebody you should go write a check for if you can afford to and pay somebody to hold you accountable? Or is it more of like finding somebody that's in your friend or family that can maybe do that? Like, what would you be looking for?
Yeah, so, it's changed over the years, but I have a coach that I've been paying for the last 8 years. His name's David Traub. He's actually taught a lot of the unconscious programming that I teach in personal development. So it's been really an honor to work with him. And then just building and developing high-level relationships. I mean, just being around you, having these conversations, I can feel myself elevate because I know that you're real. I know that the guy that I'm seeing in front of me is a representation of your best self and who you want to be in the world. One of the first things we connected on was like, hey, dude, I just did this week retreat where I got to dive in and do some work on myself. Like that speaks volumes to me. Most people aren't willing to do something like that. So as you go down this path of hiring a coach or getting a therapist or joining seminars and being around this type of community, you start to develop friends. And I want to see you be your best self. So if I'm seeing you do something, I'm like, hey, dude, I'm noticing something. Like, what's going on there? I wouldn't be your friend if I didn't do that.
That's the truth.
Like, hey, dude, I'm noticing something right now. Like you mentioned, you have a great relationship with God. Like, when's the last time you were in the church?
Right.
Man, man, I've been super busy. You're right, dude. Just that comment can shift somebody's perspective. Somebody that cares enough to be like, hey, dude, what's going on?
Really powerful.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your book.
It's interesting. It took me 2 years to write it because every time I got on the Zoom with the ghostwriter, I had to like relive those experiences. And this was like my healing journey. The Unlikely Businessman. I've created a 9-figure business. Bro, I'm a 7th grade dropout. To this day, if you told me, Ryan, your life depends on writing an incredible article, I'd fail. Like,
maybe not with ChatGPT.
ChatGPT, I'm down. That was the best thing ever happened to me.
Right.
Bro, so like the journey to writing the book was immense, dude. It was very healing because I had to address all that stuff and then the fear of like exposing myself.
And it's now out there forever.
Yeah, there's nothing I can do now.
Right.
Dude, I'm actually trying to sell a real estate deal in California, and it's a REIT, and they read my book and they're like, oh, he had 21 felonies with a kid. Dude, I was a it was 25 years ago. I was 14. Like, because it's out there. So like, it's so crazy because like I got the text from the realtor. He's like, yeah, they need to have a second meeting because they read this article about what you did as a juvenile. I was like, dude, I'm putting it out there in the world to like make the world a better place.
Right.
Like, if you did a background on me, you wouldn't even see it. And so it was just funny because like those were the things I was afraid of, But I also think like those are valuable because it's a friendly reminder. If I don't stay the course, if I don't continue doing God's work, I can go back to that guy. And so I think those are good reminders for me.
The Unlikely Businessman. I like that title a lot. Like it kind of goes back to the imposter syndrome we were talking about a little bit. It's kind of like buried in the title a little bit, right? Like the guy that, because I'm kind of similar to you. I feel that way a lot of times. I grew up in my grandpa and grandma's garage. I didn't have anything growing up. I didn't go to college. I barely got through high school. I mean barely. And I got into a ton of trouble when I was a kid, So yeah, with just drugs, all kinds of stuff, right? So it's kind of, like I relate to that is what I'm saying. And I think there's a lot of people out there probably that do too.
100%.
There's a lot of people that fall into business, the right opportunity, right place, right time, right people. And they're an action taker, but they're not necessarily, or they don't think they're qualified to be in that place at that time. And the next thing they know, they wake up and they're like, they have some big organization similar to like what you mentioned. And you're like, dang, how did I even get here? And like, am I even worthy of being here? And then you have to go to that next level. Otherwise, you're going to go back to the previous one.
100%.
Right?
Yeah, and surrounding yourself with people that are further than you, that have traveled that path, they're going to be the ones to help guide you and kind of cross that bridge with you to become that future self.
I love that, man. Final question for you. If you could get everybody on planet Earth to do one thing for like, let's say a day, what would it be? Or a week or a month, but everybody just try one thing. It's like, try this out.
Yeah. It's interesting. I do this thing in the seminars where I call it A's to B's. So like two people get together and one's an A, one's a B, and they just love on each other. And so, being around Dr. Joe.
Two strangers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's so cool because after like a 15-minute process, like they truly experience unconditional love with a stranger. And so I now know like love is the gateway to everything. Love is the gateway to compassion. Love is the gateway to forgiveness. Love is the gateway to success. And so I think it'd be really cool to see everybody come together and just really just love on each other.
Man, I love that. Yeah, that's super cool. Ryan, where can people find you? How do they listen to you? How do they get a hold of you if they want to work with you in any capacity?
Yeah, so I literally just launched my first episode of podcast today.
Congrats.
Yeah, on the way here.
Yeah.
That was another.
What's it called?
The Ryan Zofay Experience.
There you go.
Yeah, man.
I like it.
And so the easiest way would be to find me on Instagram, ryan.zofay, Zofay. We host all of our events. We do about 7 personal development events a year. So all that information is on there. You can get my book, wherever you can buy books at. It's all over the place, which is pretty cool.
I love it.
Yeah, man.
I'll have to come to one of your events.
Yeah, I love that, dude.
I'm looking forward to it. I appreciate you
Are
coming
you coming
on
to
the show.
Aspire tomorrow?
I'm not going to be at Aspire, dude. I've got a jam-packed calendar.
It's all
I
good,
might be able to like stop by for a little while.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
And swing by. I do need to run into Andrew again. I told him the next time he's here, I need to get him on the pod.
Yeah, he's sick, dude. His ability to maneuver on stage is pretty awesome, man.
He's a beast.
Yeah, for sure.
I remember I did his. Is he still doing the Money Is show? Okay.
Yeah.
So I did that like way back, I think when he first started it.
Wow.
And I flew to, I think it was Utah, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And his big office. And even just the experience that he had laid out there. I don't know if you've ever I
haven't been there.
Okay.
No.
But just, everything. I've told my team a couple times, I kind of want to mirror, I want to start to mirror what he did. Just
wow.
Dude, you walk in, that you have every guest has a gift basket.
Wow.
You sign your name on the wall. There's a picture of you. By the time you're done with the podcast, you have a plaque on the wall.
That's cool,
it's
bro. Yeah.
pretty wild. You know,
Yeah.
I was like, dude, that Andrew has a way of making people feel special. And I like that about him. You know what I mean? And I feel like anybody who's a good gift giver
Sure.
or anything like that in that capacity is really cool.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome.
I appreciate you being on the show,
I appreciate
Ryan.
you, bro. Thank you so much,
of
man.
course.
Yeah.
Hey, if you're still watching, make sure you subscribe if you're on YouTube. Comment down below. Make sure you go follow Ryan. All of his information will be down in the description below. If you're listening on any other platform, make sure to leave a review. Appreciate you. See you in the next one.